Hey everybody, Amy here with Elysian Acres Soap, and I'm going to show you how to make polka dots today. So this is my mold already set up to pour my batter into it. So just to give you a little rundown of what's going on here, I 3D printed my templates to hold my straws in place. Um, so most of the straws are just regular old plastic drinking straws, but I also, you can see, printed some of my own straws in sizes that I just couldn't find. So I will continue telling you about all the straws and templates in just a minute, but first I want to go over my batter real fast. So I've already mixed up my batter to a very light trace. You can see that it just barely is past emulsion, and that is what we want for this technique because we're going to be pouring this batter into the mold, and it needs to be thin enough that it can really fill in all the tiny little gaps between all of the straws. If you get thicken up, you're going to have a lot of gaps in there. You're just not going to be able to flow very nicely around. So I left some holes in the top of my template for this very reason, so that I could pour the batter in through the top. And I'm speeding this up, but I was going so slowly. And the reason I have my mold sitting on a Lazy Susan is also so I could just kind of give it a little spin, give it a little jiggle, and really encourage that batter to seep around every single straw evenly. Now, going back to my templates and all about how I made them, I did choose to 3D print my templates, mostly because I have a 3D printer and it's a great tool that is perfect for this sort of a technique. However, you do not have to have 3D printed template in order to make this design. This polka dot soap technique was actually created by Tatiana Serko of Creative Soaps by Stetso, and she actually offers an online course where she shows you how to make your own polka dot soap, and she goes in depth into all the different ways that you can make your own template out of a lot of different materials, out of clay or melt and pour soap, or even just thick sheets of recycled plastic. There's so many options and ways that you can make this design your own. Now you can see here that my batter is starting to thicken up just a little bit. So it's starting to mound up in the places that I poured it. And that's okay at this point because I already got it in and around all the little straws on the bottom. Now, one thing you can't see right here is that I actually have an identical template on the bottom of my mold underneath the soap. And it's identical to the top pieces, and it's just anchoring in the bottom of those straws so that I can maintain that symmetrical design all the way through. So here it goes into the oven for a C-pop overnight, and this is the next morning. Now, this was the first time I'd ever used a 3D printed mold in inside any kind of a soap batter. I've used it for other kinds of techniques like with soap dough, but I've never actually put it in the batter with raw soap batter. So I had no idea if it was going to hold up. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get these straws out. And so here I am pulling out the straws at first. I discovered that I needed a little extra help to get out the 3D printed straws, but I was really, really happy that they just slid right out for the most part. And these are just printed in regular PLA. It wasn't even, an ABS or some kind of a stronger material. One thing that I would change is I printed a little lip on all of my straws, with the thought that it would help to get them in without having them slip and slide around. And it did help a bit with that. But you'll notice that every time I try to pull straight up on one of them, that little top cap just breaks right off. And I am just loving how cleanly most of these are coming out. Now, some of them you'll see had a little trouble getting out. And that was simply because the layers of the 3D printed straws started to separate on me, and the caps just kind of broke off. So I will show you in just a moment how I got those out, but it really wasn't a very big deal. They still slid out. And here is the other side with just the regular straws. And you can see on these, they actually did fill up with batter. And these make such a fun little popping sound when you pull them out. It's really fun. So here I get to see for the first time that the whole template had no problem sliding right off. And then you can see the template on the back. So again, it's just an identical template that was from the front. And I'm using a different straw just to poke through those ones that the caps broke off of, and they come right out beautifully. Another thing I was concerned about was I didn't want to waste all of this plastic on one single use. And so I was really, really hoping that I was going to be able to rinse all of these drinking straws and 3D printed straws and reuse them. And I totally can. I just soaked all of the pieces in warm water for about an hour, and every single piece, every single straw came out beautifully clean, and it can be reused. So I'm really, really happy about that. I don't like to use single-use plastics ever if I can avoid it. This is one of those techniques where I couldn't really see a way around it, but I'm really thrilled to say that they could all be reused. So for my design, I'm doing two different sides of the design, obviously. And what I'm going to do here, for the right side, with all of the symmetrical polka dots, I want some of them to be filled with black batter, and I want some of them to be filled with white batter. I want just kind of a variation in my design. So what I'm doing here is using black soap dough that I already had made, and I'm plugging up the bottom of those holes with that dough. So my thought on this is when the whole big bar of soap at this point goes back into the mold, and I pour batter in between, I just felt like the bottom wasn't going to be sealed enough to keep the black batter from seeping underneath and getting into all the other holes. And it turns out I was exactly right. So I'm very, very glad that I did this first step of plugging the bottom of those holes with that soap dough. It really, really helped. And you'll see in just a minute when I start to fill them what I mean. And you'll see, oh, there we go. So there, all my straws are rinsed, clean and beautiful, ready to reuse. I have actually reused these drinking straws at least 3 times now, including going in the oven overnight for C-pop, and they came out fine. So I am starting to fill my black dots here, and you can disregard the big black straws sticking out. I simply put those in the holes to remind myself which holes needed to be black. So that was just my little trick to remember which ones I needed to do ahead of time. So I really struggled with getting these black dots filled. As you can see, it's really a tiny hole. And when you get any kind of an air bubble on the bottom of that hole, it makes it really hard for the batter to go all the way down to the bottom. And plus, my batter was a tiny bit thicker here than was ideal. I did manage to do okay, but I gotta say, I still had a lot of air bubbles in these that I wasn't thrilled about. So this is my trick. This little guy saved me. I don't show it here because I didn't figure out this trick until farther along in the process. I just struggled through all these. But if you use one of those little medicine droppers that comes with kids' medicine, and just use it like a syringe and just squirt the soap right down into the hole, it worked beautifully every single time. And so here I am with my white batter, and this is a much, much, much thinner trace, and this trace was perfect. I had no problem at all with every single one of my white holes getting filled with this beautiful thin trace. So that's one thing you have to remember, that if you're not using a syringe to really shoot the batter down in there, then you want to be at a very, very thin trace. Now, since I already did my black dots and already got them filled and the bottoms were filled, I went ahead and just basically flooded the whole top of this slab. Everything went white and I just went for it and it worked out. And so you could see a lot of that batter did seep through to the bottom, so I was very happy that I plugged my black holes. Now, this is my multi-bar cutter that I have actually just removed a few wires from so that I have one big gap that makes 3-inch wide bars. I am I'm waiting on my new single bar soap cutter to come in the mail. I'm very, very excited. But in the meantime, this is how I get around it. This is what I do. I just remove some of the wires from my multi-bar cutter and it works like a charm. And talk about the most satisfying cuts ever. Seeing the beautiful straight lines on these cuts just made me so happy. And this one's my favorite. Just watch. Look at it. It was so straight and beautiful. I planned to give those out as samples, but I'm not going to lie. I'm just keeping all of them for myself. They make me so happy. There's just something so beautiful about those straight lines. And so I have to apologize here in a minute, guys. My camera ran out of storage before I was fully finished cutting these bars. So in just a minute, I'll just show you the final result that I was really, really happy with. But I just want to go over, again, a couple of the things that I really learned from this technique. The first is you definitely need a nice thin trace when you're pouring the filler batter. I highly recommend plugging up those extra holes if you are doing different colors to prevent that seepage on the bottom of the mold. And just have fun with it. Just have so much fun. These bars ended up being my entry for the Soap Challenge Club Polka Dot Challenge. I was really, really happy with them. They just felt so me. From the color to the pattern, I loved everything about these bars. And I also scented them in Black Raspberry Vanilla, which is one of my favorite personal scents. So I think I might just keep all of them for myself. And there it is. These bars actually ended up, I believe, in 7th place. This was my entry to the bonus category, and you can see here what it looks like with some of the black dots and some of the white dots. Again, these are the best bars from that batch. There were a lot of those black dots with some bubbles and some issues, which is why it ended up being my bonus category entry. But thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.